9 p.m. They call it the hour of the wolf, or maybe the hour of the lock. In that house, where time seemed to sag and groan, 9 p.m. was a hard stop. The moment the clock struck, a heavy steel bolt slid home. Our only company was the silence and an empty bottle for urination. It was a grim necessity. It was a stark reminder that some rules were carved in stone. Some nights, the darkness is a presence, a hungry one, and that night, it was hungry for more than just time. Had arrived at Leo's place earlier that day. I hoped to escape the mundane. His family's house was a relic. It was a monument to forgotten sins. Ancient clapboard skins sagged under the weight of decades. It smelled of decay and damp earth. It was a funeral pall for the living. The air inside was thick with dust. A chill settled in your bones. Dim rooms were lit by bulbs that grudgingly admitted light. Shadows were swallowed whole. The place felt less like a home and more like a tomb. Leo's parents were something else. Their smiles were stretched thin. Their eyes were deep-set and weary. They held a flicker of something ancient. They moved like ghosts. Their voices were hushed. Their movements were precise. They left us alone in that house. Just before they left, Leo's mother pulled him close. Her lips moved in an urgent, inaudible whisper. It was a secret exchange. It was meant for one. But it scraped across my nerves. There was a desperate plea in her lips. It was a silent scream of warning. It was a fear she couldn't voice. I tried to dismiss it. I told myself it was just small-town eccentricity. But the knot in my gut told a different story. Leo's bedroom was an island of the ordinary. It was in an ocean of unsettling strangeness. Posters of bands were on the walls. A messy desk was in the corner. Books were scattered. It was an illusion of normalcy. It was a cheap stage prop. It was a quiet corner. The house hummed with unseen currents. It was waiting for nightfall to shed its skin. The clock on the wall seemed to chew at the minutes. It counted down to something. My gut knew its flavor. It was dread. As the minutes bled into hours and the darkness deepened, I felt a familiar unease. It was the kind of dread that tells you the good times are over. It tells you the show is about to start. When the last sliver of twilight surrendered to the black, the house fell into a listening quiet. It wasn't empty. It was pregnant with anticipation. It was a stillness that preceded the storm, or the slaughter. You could feel it in your teeth. The air pressed in. It was thick and suffocating. That's when the sound started. Low thumps, followed by a dragging noise. It came from downstairs. It was like furniture being repositioned in the dark. Or something worse, like a corpse being repositioned in the dark. Leo waved it off. He mumbled, "Oh, just the house settling." His voice was a flimsy shield against the growing terror. But fear has its own arithmetic. It adds up in the quiet moments. Then, the true horror began. A voice. It was perfect. It was warm. It eerily mimicked Leo's mother's voice. It called from just outside the bolted door. "Boys, are you still awake?" It purred. It was a carefully crafted lie. It was perfect in its imitation. Yet it was chillingly wrong. It was the siren song of a predator. It was cloaked in familiarity. "I made some cookies, fresh from the oven. You should come get some." Cookies. It was a child's temptation. It was a killer's lure. My blood ran cold. My mind screamed at Leo not to answer. He just sat there. He was frozen. His eyes were wide and vacant. Wet, soft knocking began. It was not a fist. It was not a knuckle. Something soft squelched against the old wood, like a damp rag, or something organic, something that breathed slime. "Come on, boys," the voice coaxed. It was a little more insistent now. It was a little less sweet. Don't you want some cookies? The doorknob started to rattle, gently at first. Then it grew into a violent, desperate frenzy. The steel bolt felt like a thin veil. Wood groaned under the assault. The sound was like the scraping of bone. The voice shifted then. The mask slipped. The sweetness curdled. It grew a hard and ragged edge. The pretense was over. Now it was just the truth. Open. The door. Each word was a hammer blow. It was a command scraped from the abyss. My heart hammered against my ribs. The air itself felt heavy. It was thick with unspoken threats. We were bait in a trap. The wire was taut. The thing outside wasn't trying to trick us anymore. The pretense of warmth had evaporated. It left behind a guttural threat, a sound like gravel churning in a graveyard. Then, a new horror. A black, viscous fluid began to seep under the door. It was like black ink, spreading across the floorboards. It was a spreading stain. It moved with a slow purpose, like a hungry shadow. It smelled of things long dead, of turned earth and forgotten graves. It was a liquid shadow. It was creeping in. It promised to consume everything. Curiosity, they say, killed the cat. But that night, morbid fascination was a cruel mistress. It lures you to the edge of the cliff, then it whispers for you to look down. Despite every fiber of my being screaming at me not to, I leaned down. I pressed my eye to the keyhole. It was a peephole into hell. What I saw, words don't do it justice. It was an assemblage of nightmares, a scarecrow built from stolen night, impossibly tall, impossibly thin. Its limbs were sticks and shadows. They were stitched together with malevolent intent. Its face was a void, a hungry emptiness that swallowed light. It was an absence of feature. It was more terrifying than any grotesque visage. It wore fragments of the house. A stolen kettle was on its head. A broom handle was an arm. It was mockery dressed as terror. It was a desecration of the mundane. This was it, the Nightman. And then the knife twisted, a whisper, soft and insidious. My own mother's voice, sweet and low, a comfort I hadn't realized I'd missed. "Come home, Liam," it purred. It was a lie, but a potent one. It knew my weaknesses. It knew my fears. It reached into my memory. It pulled out the threads of my homesickness. It wove them into a noose. It was a violation. It was a defilement of something sacred. It was a primal scream. It wasn't just outside the door. It was inside my head. It was picking at the stitches of my sanity. The realization hit me. We weren't just trapped. We were known. This thing wasn't some random monster. It was a hunter. We were its chosen prey. Every word, every sound. It was designed to peel away our sanity, layer by agonizing layer, spun around. My heart was a frantic drum. I grabbed Leo. "What the hell is that thing?" I demanded. My voice was a ragged whisper. The truth, when it came, wasn't a sudden revelation. It was a slow crawl. It was dragged from him in tearful sobs. Leo, broken and terrified, laid bare the ugly bargain. "The house. It belongs to it," he choked out. Tears streamed down his face, from 9 p.m. until dawn. It's built on unhallowed ground, a place where the rules of man didn't apply. Something ancient held the deed. Then the punch to the gut, the horrifying truth. It demanded someone new, he confessed. His voice was barely audible. It was thick with guilt and fear. Me. I wasn't a guest. I was the offering. The lamb led to slaughter. My friend, my betrayer, had brought me here to die. The world tilted on its axis. The betrayal cut deeper than any monster's claw. The psychological games ended. The whispers ceased. Now, it was just brute force, a tearing, rending sound. The door splintered. It was our last flimsy shield, Wood screamed as it ripped apart. The thing wasn't just at the door anymore. It was the door. It was the house. It was a living grotesque. It pulled itself through the gaping maw of the ruined doorway. It was a nightmare made manifest. Floorboards were its limbs. Ancient pipes were its veins. A grandfather clock's face stared from where its head should be. Its hands were stuck at 9, and in its chest, a macabre heartbeat. My duffel bag, stolen, pulsating, feeding its twisted form. Time is up. The words were a death knell, a final judgment. They echoed through the room. It was a chilling symphony of doom. Panic is a cruel master, but desperation is a sharper tool. My eyes darted around the room. I searched for anything, any edge. And there, on Leo's nightstand, a powerful LED flashlight, a mundane object, suddenly imbued with the power of salvation. I saw the weakness, a flicker of vulnerability in the thing that devoured light, a desperate prayer cast in lumens. I snatched it up. I flicked it on. I aimed its blinding beam at the abomination. Each beam of light was a searing wound. The thing shrieked. It was a sound of splintering wood and dying shadow. It recoiled. It lashed out with its makeshift limbs. It tore at the walls. It tried to blot out the light. It fought back. It was a frantic dance of death. The air crackled. It was filled with the stench of ozone and fear. My hand shook, but I held the light steady. I poured every ounce of my will into it. This wasn't just about survival. It was about unmaking a nightmare. The creature writhed, slowly shrinking. Its form became less distinct, less solid, as if the light was unraveling its threads of existence. The sound it made was like a discordant chorus of dying wood, groaning pipes, shattering glass. The light flickered, a dying star. The batteries were giving out. Hope threatened to crumble, to disintegrate like the monster. I could feel the heat draining from the bulb, the power fading. Then, a thin line of silver, a promise from beyond the horizon, the first ray of dawn. It wasn't just light, it was judgment. As the sun's beam pierced the window and struck the remnants of the creature, it disintegrated, not with a bang, but a whisper, a puff of smoke and ash. It left behind the lingering scent of grave dirt. For a fleeting moment there was a sliver of peace, but peace is a fleeting illusion. No sooner had the last wisp of shadow vanished than the bedroom door opened. Leo's parents entered, not with relief, not with concern. Their faces were devoid of emotion, replaced by a deep disappointment. It seeped into the very fibers of the room. Their eyes, those ancient, knowing eyes, confirmed it. I had survived, and in doing so, I had broken their bargain. The horror wasn't over for them. It was just a different kind of imprisonment now. I was free, but I left a piece of myself trapped within those walls. Some nightmares don't end when you wake up. They just change addresses. The sun had risen, but the shadows still clung to my soul. I had cheated death, but the cost was a piece of my innocence, buried somewhere in that house. A hard lesson, learned the hard way. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed.